All right, everyone, breaking right now. We got some news. RNC Communications Director Sean Spicer has been named Assistant to the President and White House Press Secretary. I am Trish Regan. Welcome, everyone, to the Intelligence Report. After weeks and weeks of speculation, Donald Trump has made his decision. He has named Sean Spicer. You know, he's a man that you know him well. He's been on the show a whole bunch. He's the Communications Director for the Republican National Committee, and he is said to be very close to Reince Priebus. There had been some talk of this basically being a twofer. If you got Reince, you got Sean. Now, there are a lot of rumors swirling, or were a lot of rumors swirling over who might get this. But again, we can confirm right now it is Sean Spicer. Joining me right now with more is Blake Bowman. Hey, Blake.
Hi there, Tricia. This announcement just came moments ago from the Trump transition team from the Office of Communications led by Sean Spicer that Sean Spicer will indeed be the next press secretary of the incoming administration. This seems to have the integration, really, of the top RNC brass now amongst the top echelon of the Trump administration, as over at the RNC, before Donald Trump was elected the next president of the United States, and really even before that he got the nomination, it was Reince Priebus running the RNC and Sean Spicer as his right hand. He was the head of communications over at the RNC, was also elevated at one point last year to the chief strategist. Now you've got Reince Priebus as the chief of staff, Sean Spicer as basically the face of the Trump administration day in and day out come January 20th as the one to give that messages, to give their messages. Should also note that Hope Hicks, Jason Miller, Dan Scavino, Trump folks there from the beginning, also elevated into the communications office among the Trump staff. Speaking of announcements, there was another major one earlier today, another Trump loyalist, one who was just about there from the beginning, that being Kellyanne Conway. She was given the position of counselor to the president. And in fact, on this network, Ms. Conway said that she had turned down the press secretary job, seeming as if she maybe wanted something a little bit more. But leading into that, she spoke with Maria Bartiromo and kind of put aside any fears, really, of joining the White House as a mother. Listen to this exchange here.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking with Juan Williams earlier, and he was questioning, well, Kellyanne has 4 kids. How's she going to do it? He got creamed on Twitter. Everybody on Twitter was saying, why? A woman with 4 kids can't do it, and a man can't? So what? That she's going to be working 24/7.
Well, I would just say to everyone, not Juan, because I don't want him to be creamed, but I would say that I don't play golf, and I don't have a mistress. So I have a lot of time that a lot of these other men don't.
So there you go, Trish. That's the incoming counselor to the president. And now we can report that Sean Spicer will be the press secretary, basically the face of all the messaging.
Oh,
Trish?
Well, I hope that wasn't a direct dig at Juan. But anyway, good for her. I can appreciate that. As a mother of 3 myself, she's going to be working very hard, as she has been throughout. Thank you so much, Blake Berman. All right, let's get to our other top story. Our CEO-in-chief, Donald Trump, cutting deals all across the country, and he's not even in office yet. This after the president-elect blasted Boeing and blasted Lockheed Martin on Twitter for crazy, out-of-control costs. I mean, really crazy on government projects. Trump invited the CEOs to his Palm Beach resort for a little chat, and guess what? The costs of all these things are suddenly getting slashed. You know, no one has ever bothered to treat Americans' taxpayer money with any kind of respect. No one in government bothers. Well, maybe that's about to change. We hope so. Trump is a businessman turned politician, and I got to tell you, no self-respected businessman pays one more dime for anything than he has to. No different here, perhaps. He slammed Boeing and he slammed Lockheed Martin over these outrageous costs for their government contracts, specifically the new Air Force One and Lockheed Martin's F-35 fighter jets, which was going to cost $400 billion. Billion. $400 billion. I mean, that's like half of Obama's stimulus program. Anyway, now these guys are changing their tune. Watch.
We're all focused on the same thing here. We want to make sure that we give our war fighters the best capability in the world, and that we do it in a way that's affordable for our taxpayers. And his business headset around that is excellent. It was a terrific conversation. Got a lot of respect for him. He's a good man, and he's doing the right thing.
His business head around that. You know, funny how this all works, right? I want to go to Peter Barnes, who's standing by with more on this story in Washington. Hey, Peter.
Yeah, that's right, Trish. Hey, this is a big surprise. I mean, one of the reasons that Donald Trump said to elect him was because he said he was a very good negotiator. So he's already out there doing it. And as you mentioned, this all started on Twitter in the last couple of weeks on the by the way, it's 2 new Air Force Ones, first of which will be delivered in 2018. He tweeted earlier this month, Boeing is building a brand new 747 Air Force One for future presidents, but costs are out of control, more than $4 billion. Cancel order. On the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, he tweeted about a week later, the F-35 program and cost is out of control. Billions of dollars can and will be saved on military and other purchases after January 20th. Welcome to the Trump Party, government contractors.
Well, we're going to see. We're going to see. Just beginning. It's a dance, you know. It's a little bit of a dance. But we're going to get the cost down, and we're going to get it done beautifully. And these are great people. These are amazing people.
Now, transition aides are giving a little more color into the meetings yesterday between the president-elect and the contractor CEOs. An aide saying that Dennis Muhlenberg and Marilyn Houston were there simply to discuss costs relating to these government projects and military readiness. They say neither were there for job interviews, and a lot of folks visiting the president-elect in Mar-a-Lago have been there for job interviews. As you know, Mr. Trump has already tapped two CEOs, Rex Tillerson and Andy Pudster, for high-profile posts. But transition aides stressing this morning that won't be the case for the leaders of Boeing and Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, you know, I got to say it's a little refreshing, right? I mean, there were all those stories years ago about the thousands of dollars that the government would pay for, say, a toilet. And,
right.
You know,
and
suddenly now there's going to be some accountability that these companies just can't get away with charging whatever they want.
I started covering this F-35 Joint Strike Fighter story 25 years ago when I first got to Washington, and it was supposed to be, you know, $2 million each, or now they're whatever they're, and now they're billions each.
$400 billion. So. I mean, that's a lot of money. A lot of money. Peter Barnes, thank you so much. Republican strategist Ford O'Connell and political analyst Ellis Hennigan joining me right now. Well, Ellis, can you give him a little credit for this? I mean, we shouldn't be paying more than we have to for anything.
Absolutely not. I love the sound. The rhetoric is great. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Maybe one small note of caution, guys. Remember a couple of weeks ago we heard about this great deal that was struck by Carrier, and then we got into the details of it, and it turned out it was a whole lot fewer jobs than we hoped, and it was really
I'm going to jump in. First of all, this conversation is not about Carrier, but I would point out that he saved 800 jobs there. And by the way, for those 800 families, Ellis, that's a big deal. And you know what it is for America? It's a good feeling as you go into the holiday season. Anyway, we're talking about Boeing and Lockheed Martin.
Well, the point that I'm making, if I might get through it.
All right, hang on, Ford. Let him finish. Let him finish his point. I want to hear it. Go ahead, Ellis.
Is that in our enthusiasm about this, let us be cautious since we have had such fresh experience with these things being overhyped. I'm trying to protect you guys from embarrassing things in the future. You better listen.
Well, I'll tell you what's embarrassing. Ford O'Connell, $400 billion. That is embarrassing. It is an obscene amount of money, and I'm just happy somebody's calling him out on it.
Well, yes, the F-35 is a platypus that can't fly. Look, there's a new sheriff in town, and his name's Donald J. Trump, and he's bringing a can-do attitude to doing how we conduct the people's business. And let me be honest with you, he's telling us right now that nothing is off limits, not sacred cows like defense contractors. And let me tell you something else. He's also sending a strong message to the Congress that, guess what? Start thinking outside the box. Don't tell me we can't do it, because we've got to get jobs and economic growth going. I think this is a great sign. But what's most amazing, Trish, is you're able to do this without a grandiose press conference or some great directive, but a couple of tweets. He's giving folks like me in the media a master class in how we can get things done.
You know, by the way, you might actually, if you're Twitter, want to thank Donald Trump, because he may have single-handedly help save your company by using it as a communications platform. But anyway, you're totally right. Here's the thing, Ellis. What has always, I think, been so frustrating for so many Americans who have to balance their own checkbooks, Americans who have financial responsibilities, Americans, many of whom are small business owners, they look at Washington and think there's absolutely no accountability. I mean, it's very easy when it's somebody else's money, right? You can spend, spend, spend. Now suddenly you get someone with a business sensibility in there that knows what it means in a dollars and cents way, that can actually, frankly, do some addition, which I don't know as every politician can. So that sets a different tone. And I know you don't want to get too excited about it. You know, that's partly who you are, right? And when it comes to Donald Trump. But isn't this the way we should be talking and the way we should be thinking about everything we spend money on?
Oh, Tricia, absolutely. The same way that in the Regan household and the O'Connor household and even in the Hennigan household, we try to count our pennies. I'm just saying that we do have some history with this guy. And I know you guys don't like looking at it, but we have some history of things that get vastly overhyped that a week from now or 2 weeks from now look very different. And I extend in the holiday season that cautionary note to all of my friends out there.
Yeah,
who are doing
and you also said the guy couldn't win. He didn't have hope and a prayer of actually winning this thing. And guess what? You were wrong, and we were right. I'd also point out that we always told you it was 800 jobs he was saving there at carrying.
Trish, if we're going to have that debate, I would put Donald Trump on my side of that equation because I don't think he thought he was going to win. Let's be honest here if we're going to.
But Ellis, I think we're missing a larger picture here, and that is Donald J. Trump is trying to set a tone and lay a foundation for how we're going to do things going forward.
Set a lot of tone,
and you
that's
have to understand something else. The problem with the defense spending is not how much we spend, not how much we spend, but how we actually spend it. And you got to realize that Boeing and Lockheed Martin and United Technologies have been just raping the American taxpayer for some time.
We agree on that.
And the fact that we're doing it here
and
is
the fact that this is leading the show, and that we're talking about this as a news story, financial accountability in Washington, this is good. Ford and Ellis, good to see you guys. Thank you so much. Let's turn to the massive search that's underway right now for this Islamic refugee. Take a look at him here, wanted in connection to the terrorist attack in Berlin. Even the family of the 24-year-old suspect is urging that he turn himself in. His own brother saying he deserves every condemnation if he's guilty of the attack. Fox News correspondent Greg Palcott is live in Berlin, Germany, with the latest on the search for the Berlin terrorist. Greg.
Hi, Trish. Yeah, we are at the just reopened Christmas market in Berlin, which was the scene of the terror attack, as the investigation certainly goes into high gear. And that means, as you noted, searching for that Tunisian man, 24-year-old, believed to have been responsible for this carnage. Officials saying today they have pretty good certainty that that is the man who did it. They have found his fingerprints on the cab of the truck that killed and injured the people here. Local media, however, are saying they're not sure yet that the police really have the proper clues, despite raids that happen both here in Germany and European-wide. There are also a lot of reports, Trish, that say this suspect, this Tunisian man, Anas Amri, had been very much on the German radar for many, many months. He's been arrested, he's been detained, he was even monitored offering to commit just such an attack on German soil. And reportedly, he was on U.S. terror radar as well. He said to have been on a no-fly terror list, and officials in the United States did their own monitoring, apparently, of him looking at websites, how to build a bomb, also communicating with terror figures. Trish, if we can go back on camera here, I'll explain to you a little bit of what happened, because we are at the very location where exactly 3 nights ago this truck hit. And again, 25-ton weighing truck came barreling down the street over to my right and then right into this Christmas market. I'll step aside and cameraman Mal James will show you the scene. You can see it's crowded now. It was crowded then. It went right through at 40 miles an hour, top speed, in between those 2 lines of stalls, killing people, injuring people, smashing into the stalls, ending up about 200 feet down there. We talked to one eyewitness today. He said he was terrible. We talked to another eyewitness, said it all happened, all that carnage, all that bloodshed in just 7 seconds. Hard to believe. Again, people are here, a sign of defiance, a sign that they want to make sure that Berlin does not go away. Here's a couple of quotes that we got today from people at the market. Take a listen.
Yeah, we will survive, and also with our values, we will survive.
It's just so terrible what happened, and yeah, I think.
But life goes on here.
Life goes on. Berlin lives on.
One more sad note, Trish. We spoke to a U.S. Embassy official, and he told me that two Americans were hurt in this attack. One has been released from the hospital. One, the latest information is that person is still in the hospital. The only other information we know is that everybody that's still in the hospital, about 12 people, are in serious condition. Back to you.
Real tragedy. All right, Greg, thank you very much. That's a Wisconsin woman losing control during her state's electoral college vote, which of course went to Donald Trump. She screamed at electors, you see her there, accusing them of selling out and saying they don't deserve to be in America, that it's her America, my America. There she is. Can you imagine, think about it, if things were reversed and that was actually a Donald Trump supporter saying, this is my America. Well, the media would be ripping that supporter apart. Meanwhile, you got groups right now like MoveOn.org that are warning more protests are coming, especially for the inauguration. I mean, why can't those on the left just come to terms with reality? Why can't they just move on? Why can't they start focusing on the future? They got a lot of healing they need to do internally. Ford O'Connell, Ellis Hennigan, back with me. Ellis, if that had been a Trump supporter, people would be going wild. The fact that she said this is my America. I mean, look, it's everyone's America, and you want to change it? You get out and change it. You actually start encouraging a candidate like Hillary Clinton to go visit places like Wisconsin and campaign there, and then maybe you got a shot. But, for them to be blaming anyone else other than themselves and for them to express this kind of sour grapes, I question it.
First of all, get that lady a Valium, okay? I mean, she needs some help, clearly. But listen, there's crazy people in our political system, and for instance, do you believe, Trish, that all reasonable dialogue is among Trump supporters and the crazy people are all the Democrats? Because that's not really the year that I noticed.
So, I'm trying to hear you out. I think the problem that this country has faced right now, Ellis and Ford can elaborate on this, is that many on the right feel as though they've been shut out, that they're not allowed to have an opinion because people like that woman that you just saw, they're doing all the talking for everyone else, and they're refusing to entertain or allow any other thoughts in their head. It's happening in the political discourse in this country. It's certainly been happening at universities all across the country. It's as though the left will not tolerate any kind of discussion that does not completely fall in line with their train of thought, Ford.
Where have you all been? My God.
Right. This is how liberals are conditioned to act when they don't get their way. They basically kick and scream. But I have to say something. In this particular situation where it was the Wisconsin electors, I see something far more sinister here, and she's actually subverting the system. This is a situation of the peaceful transfer of power, and Democrats always find it curious every now and then when they wake up every 4 years and find out that the Electoral College actually controls who the next president of the United States is. So remember, not only does she need a Valium, she also needs a lesson in high school civics.
Well put. Well put. Look, people are talking about changing this electoral system. They don't like it. I don't know where you come out on this, Ellis, but I'll tell you one thing. I'm a small-town girl from New Hampshire. We got 4 lousy electoral votes. But you know what? We get candidates that actually come to the state of New Hampshire to campaign because we got 4 votes.
Well, I'll tell you
otherwise, if it were a popular system, I'd be sitting high on the hog, I guess, here in New York City because we'd get all the candidates in Port Little, New Hampshire. We'll get no one.
Well, I'm going to advance a wild theory here for you, Trish, that all Americans ought to have the same vote. We shouldn't depend on what state you live in, whether you're rural or conservative or liberal or urban. We all ought to have one vote.
So tyranny of the majority?
Vote would do
That's what it is? Tyranny of the majority. In other words, then basically New York and L.A., they get all the say, and everybody else, good luck.
Crazy idea, I know, but I think we ought to be equal.
To give you an example, but Ellis, hold on. Basically, Donald Trump won, 2,623 counties, and Hillary Clinton won 489. Basically, Democrats want to marginalize the rural vote, which is, by the way, the majority of this nation, and they want to basically keep it within the towns where they control the government and use their Saul Alinsky trappings to keep them on the dole, to keep the government going, which is the way they want it.
Did you ever read Atlas Shrugged?
Crazy talk. If you think that a rural county in Montana ought to have the same votes as New York City, you guys have a very different view of democracy.
It's the reason why we got 2 senators from every state, right? This is why it was set up this way. You should be all for this.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that after we get rid of this
diversity. Aren't you talking about a diversity of opinion? Don't you want diversity in the White House? The only way you get it is if everybody has a fair shot at having their opinion be heard.
I see. Why don't we? What about one person, one vote? Are you guys opposed to that so much?
This is it's a silly conversation, frankly, to be having.
You're scared
because
of
there's a
that.
reason why the system was set up the way it was,
don't
and
like
it's something
democracy.
we should be proud of as Americans.
You don't like
and
democracy.
to threaten that or try and change that, the irony, of course, in it all is pretty amazing. Good to see you guys. Thank you so much. We are going to be right back with more. I'll see you here. Donald Trump tapping Peter Navarro to run the brand new White House National Trade Council. The appointment of Mr. Navarro, a China trade critic, lets Trump fulfill another campaign promise, getting tough on China. Take a listen to Trump here on the campaign trail.
What China has done to our country is the biggest theft and the greatest theft in the history of the world.
This is the one I didn't want to hear. Give me China. Give me China.
China. You ever see China's tone? China. 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 China.
China. China.
We don't win anymore. When was the last time we won? We lose to China.
I just like hearing him say China. All right, here to weigh in, University of Maryland economist Peter Marisi. You know, the other Peter Navarro, is known to be pretty protectionist. He's very concerned about the role China has been playing, and basically, as he sees it, they have been taking very bad advantage of us. This is obviously a viewpoint that Donald Trump believes as well. So how does it start to change?
Well, my feeling is that Peter's got it right. I was a referee for his last promotion, I want you to know, and we're longtime friends and colleagues. We have to hit China hard where it hurts on economic issues. A 45% tariff's a great idea, but we have to supplement that, for example.
45%?
Absolutely.
You think it's a great idea?
On China,
just
yeah.
walk me through. I think it's a good threat. I don't know if it's a good idea to actually get there.
Don't make
but
threats.
I like the ability of saying, hey, China, you know, we got to play fair.
When I was 6 years old, I was the smallest kid in the class and the biggest one picked on me. I picked up a stick and my father said, be prepared to use it if you're going to banish it. My feeling is we need to impose the tariff to bring China to the table. We might start with 10%, then 20%, and ratchet it up, and bring them to the table. But we have to supplement that with other pressure. For example, in the South China Sea, where they're taking advantage of our partners by basically intimidating their fishing fleets and so forth. And we have to push back on investment. You know, a Chinese company can come here and buy 100% of an American company. General Motors can only own 49% of its joint venture in China.
So how would you
and
solve
has to
that?
give away its
Is the answer, okay, China, you want to come here and buy an American company? Guess what? We're allowed to go there, and we're allowed to buy a Chinese company. In other words, it's got to be a two-way street.
Absolutely. It's got to be reciprocity. We'll let your products in, but you got to let ours in. And since you're not letting our products in right now, we're not going to let your products in.
Right.
You know, their exports outnumber ours 4-1.
So let me
Who's
ask
going
you
to be
this.
hurt more?
Let me ask you, let's not forget, right? China's our banker. We owe China a lot of money. They're the ones that buy all our bonds. They own our treasury debt. So in some ways, that makes it tougher. And in other ways, it may make it easier, Peter, right? They're the ones that could be on the hook for all that money if we don't pay it back.
Well, think about it. If they dump the bonds, that's the threat. They basically are swapping dollar bills for bonds. So instead of having pictures of George Washington that pay interest, they have pictures of George Washington that don't pay interest. Now, those bonds hit the market. The Fed can simply print new dollars to replace the ones China used to buy them up, that took off the market.
Inflate your way out of debt. Is that where you're going?
Well, what I'm trying to say is if China dumps the bonds, it takes a lot of dollars out of the global money supply. So we can replace those and absorb the bonds ourselves. So instead of paying China interest, the bonds are on deposit at the Fed, and the Fed collects the interest and remits it to the Treasury. It's a little bit complex and circular, but the bottom line is I can handle the threat. I mark my words. Mark my words. If we set our mind to it, we can bring the dragon to its knees in 90 days and solve this problem. But there can't be half measures. You have to go all out, full Monty, because the Chinese are out to break us. And be clear, China is the enemy.
Well, you know, you're right. We have a whole lot more leverage than we think or we've shown. Peter, good to see you. All right. Chaos on board a Delta flight after a Muslim American claims he was thrown off the plane for speaking Arabic. Watch this.
We're getting kicked out because we spoke a different language. You guys are racist. I cannot believe my eyes. I cannot believe it. I spoke a word.
Turns out that was not why he was thrown off the plane. Not at all. We get the intel on what really happened, and it has nothing to do with him being Islamic. That's next. Joining me right now, the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, and national security and foreign policy analyst, Arash Aramesh. Good to see both you guys.
Thank you.
You know, Dr. Jasser, I believe Delta in this one. I absolutely believe him. But it does beg the question. Everyone keeps telling us we're supposed to report strange behavior. But when you got folks like this joker, and that's what he is, some YouTube joker, out there accusing people of being Islamophobic, that is effectively why people are afraid to come forward. They're afraid of being labeled. What would you tell them?
I would tell them that this may not be militant terrorism, but what this guy is doing is a form of cultural or civilizational terrorism, or jihadism, if you will, because he's trying to basically exert this mockery, separate us Muslims out, make Muslims into being not an idea, but an identification. And it's basically dangerous to us as a community. We need to fight this and no longer just be about the grievance mill, about the victimization, but rather say, you know what, the best way to melt away fear of Muslims, fear of Islam, is for Americans to see us lead the reform, not to do things like this, where all they see us is exploit this culture that gives us freedom in order to make Americans feel sort of politically correct and bigoted, when in fact he's the one that should be on a no-fly list. And that's actually what I hope comes out of this. This guy has been exploiting airlines, as have others who have been lying about various activities in order to become victims rather than leaders.
You're calling on the Muslim community to do more. Mr. Aramesh, I know that Dr. Jasser has been out there asking members of that community to participate in this reform that he's trying to get them on board with. But Dr. Jasser, you haven't gotten a lot of support. We'll get to that in a minute. But why is the Muslim community resisting this? I mean, why do they want to say, Mr. Aramesh, it's us that are the victims here?
You should ask that from Zuhdi Jasser, who is an Arab Muslim American. I'm not, so he's best equipped to answer that question. But let me go back to what happened on the plane. You know, if you act like a jackass on a plane, you deserve to get kicked out and kicked off the plane. Having said that, the reason this is an issue now is because on numerous occasions in the past, people who were speaking Arabic or a different language, especially Arabic, and looked a certain way, were asked to leave that plane because some people on the plane felt uncomfortable. Not only that, but just over the weekend, a mother and a daughter at JCPenney were harassed by another woman because they spoke Spanish. Now, we are a great country because of our diversity. We are a great country because we have people here who speak 2, 3, 4, 5 languages. If you want to fight terror, if you want to recruit intelligence officers and officers in the clandestine service, who do you recruit? You go to people who understand a language and know a culture, and those are the people who make amazing intelligence officers and are loyal to the flag and are experts in the field.
So what's your point?
I ask Zuhdi this.
What's your point?
My point is this. I ask Zuhdi, if you can't get my point after what I just told you, here's my question for
Sum it up. I don't have a ton of time. Give it to me in bullets.
My point is next time Zuhdi Jasser, a former Navy officer and a medical doctor, sits on a plane, picks up the phone, and talks in Arabic with his mother, and someone gets offended or gets scared, how would he feel
you believe the guy.
That plane?
That's what you're saying. You believe the guy. This is actually what happened, or you're saying if this scenario were to happen, you think Americans are that racist and they're going to say, "I want him off the plane." Well, then give it to me again.
You either didn't hear me or you ignored to hear me. I said
give it to me again. What is your point?
Did you hear that part? Did you hear that part? That he's a jackass. I'm saying there's something called the Constitution. You can't just kick people off the plane because you feel uncomfortable because they have a beard or they speak Hebrew or they speak Arabic or they speak Yiddish or Russian. You can't do that. And I want to ask
what I'm saying to you is the entire world is out there saying be more vigilant. And we're talking about this story at hand, this particular story. You got idiots like this guy who you used an appropriate word for, and they're really threatening the entire system. You're off on another tangent. I'm on this story. You're on another story. I see where you're going because you just want to slam everybody who might be a little bit concerned about the fact that we have an Islamic threat amongst us. But Dr. Jasser is in the trenches. He's dealing with this on a regular basis, trying to get people in the community to come on board with some kind of reform. And Dr. Jasser, you're not seeing a willingness there from that community.
Right, and it's because the dominant bandwidth has been this victimization, the grievance mill, that we are victims of the bigots, and we're not even getting to the deeper issue. And I'm sorry, we are smarter than this conversation that you know, his focus as a security analyst is about speaking Arabic. Yeah, I speak Arabic, and I'm smart enough to know that if somebody's fearful, that phobia is not irrational. It's rational because of the last 300 acts of terrorism. 1% of the population has been responsible for over 90% of that. So therefore, I think smart police work should include some type of profiling, and that doesn't violate my civil rights. It simply is smart police work. And I, as a Muslim, say my duty as an American to fight that is to let Americans see that I'm not going to be a victim, but a leader in saying that this is a problem that we need to solve. And we're done with simply telling Americans that we are the victims, but actually we are the problem that needs to reform the ideas that are creating this radicalism. And by the way, this type of profiling issue, when it's exaggerated, actually radicalizes. These videos, these individuals, Council on American Islamic Relations, is the first step in radicalizing Muslims instead of actually reforming them.
All right. Well, Dr. Jasser, that I understood. Clear, concise, your point well taken. Thank you so much. Good to see you both.
You.
As always, we're going to be right back. Prince Charles, yes. The Queen of England's son, Prince Charles, he's weighing in on the refugee crisis, saying, and I quote, "The suffering doesn't end when they arrive seeking refuge in a foreign land. We are now seeing the rise of many populist groups across the world." And then he goes on to say, all of this has deeply disturbing echoes of the dark days in the 1930s. Why does everyone keep going to the 1930s? Why do the elites keep saying that? You know, he's preaching all this tolerance from the comfort of his London palace, while you got people getting run over by a truck in the streets of Berlin. Joining me right now is Washington Examiner editorial director Hugo Gurdon. Good to see you, Hugo. I mean, to me, you know, and I'm a student of history, I think it's disrespectful to make that kind of comparison.
I agree with you. You know, it's a shame that he went on this tack. Most of what he said was a good focus on the persecution of Christians and other minorities by Muslims in Muslim-majority countries where ISIS and others are trying to commit genocide. And then he went on the tack. I think it's an overwrought comparison. A lot of people try and make it. But what we have to remember is there's certain people on the left who are apt to make this comparison. You remember that Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush were both compared to Hitler. You know, it's a comparison that's often made.
Why are they so free to make that? I mean, that's the kind of thing that, you know, you save for when you really need it. And yet the left repeatedly, I mean, we've heard so many people make these comparisons, and they throw it out there like it's just, you know, a common thing to say.
Well, absolutely, and it's kind of distasteful. It's a kind of gutter comparison. Frankly, they like the boy crying wolf. They said it so often, and I think this is actually what Prince Charles is actually watching is not a return to the 1930s. It's true that establishments are being thrown out all over the Western world, and that's because electorates have become they don't respect politicians anymore because they don't think politicians tell them the truth. When politicians like President Obama or Hillary Clinton say that Muslims have nothing to do with terrorism, people know they're being lied to.
Well, look, you know, I'd say this, and you're obviously British, right? I think I hear an accent. You know, so I don't quite have the same appreciation for the royals, perhaps, that you would. But, you know, gosh darn it, I thought they were supposed to stay out of politics. And, you know, it's very easy to say this kind of stuff when you're surrounded by Secret Service and you're living in your palace and you're protected. But everyday folks out there in Europe are really dealing with this struggle, as we are seeing right now in the streets of Berlin. Hugo, good to see you. Thank you so much. We're continuing to watch this market, which is off 27 points right now. We have much more coming up for you. I'll see you here. President Obama is blaming us for how he's going to go down in history. He keeps pointing the finger at us here at Fox, not just for Hillary's loss, but for why he has a tainted legacy. Most recently, take a look at this. He said to The Atlantic, and I quote, "In 2008, I was never subjected to the kind of concentrated vilification that you see of Fox News. You started to see that kind of prism being established toward the end of the 2008 race, and obviously, almost immediately after I was elected, it was deployed in full force." Here we go again. Why is it always someone else's fault? Joining me right now, Howie Kurtz, the host of Media Buzz on the Fox News channel. Howie, it's this victimization thing that they keep doing over and over and over and over again. It's not our fault that he couldn't get the economy going. It's not our fault that Hillary Clinton couldn't engage voters and thereby continue his legacy, yet he chooses to blame us.
Yeah, blaming Fox and blaming Rush Limbaugh. Look, Barack Obama has less than a month left in office, and he doesn't seem to be able to get past this Fox fixation. What he seems to forget whenever he takes these swipes is that as president, he's got the biggest megaphone in the world, certainly far larger than a single cable news network, and yet he seems to feel like he would have been a lot more popular, a lot more successful if it only wasn't for the terrible people at Fox News.
You know, maybe he should take to Twitter and just tweet out his message a little bit more. Somebody else is doing that pretty successfully.
Yeah,
but, you know, I think it speaks in broader ways about how the left, for whatever reason, it's a victimization thing, right? It's always someone else's fault. It's someone else's fault. You don't have a good job. You haven't gotten further ahead in life. You know, nothing to do with maybe your own reality, and maybe you didn't work so hard. They want someone else to take the blame. And this is President Obama saying it's Fox News. That's the reason. If I have any taint on my legacy, that's why.
Right. The president had half a point when he talked about how to many people maybe he's a fictional character because it's not really about him. If you're angry at the government, you're angry at the head of the government. I get that. But to keep coming back to Fox and Rush and that sort of thing, you know, what also conveniently is left out of that equation is there are these other media outlets. Oh, New York Times and Washington Post editorial pages, another place that his initials are MSNBC that have very positive portrayals of the president. And so why he dwells so much, and the fact that he doesn't make a distinction between the journalists at Fox News, he had a perfectly fair interview with Chris Wallace a few months back, and the opinion people, I don't know. I know he's smart enough to get that, but he chooses not to dwell on that.
Well, I have some advice for the outgoing president. Get over it. Thank you so much, Howie. I'm going to see you all back here in 2. You know, we were just talking to Howie Kurtz about how the president is blaming Fox for his quote-unquote tainted legacy. He wants to blame someone else. I mean, we were just saying that this is kind of the left's mantra, right? You blame someone else. It's never about taking any responsibility yourself. It's somebody else's fault. I just want to point out, someone on Twitter says, I think the president needs some coloring books and a safe space. A box of tissues might help too. So I guess he can join the snowflake generation, all those millennials that get easily offended. Hey, I'm going to be hosting Risk and Reward tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern, so please tune in. I'll see you there. And next week, all next week, I will be in for Neil at 4 p.m. on Fox News, so I hope to see you there, too. I'll be here, of course, as well. We got the Dow trading down 23 points. I'm sending it over to Colin. I don't know if it really can happen today, but, you know, we're not that far away. I should point that out.
One of these days, right, Trish?
One of these days, and at some point it will, quite possibly in the next hour.